Greetings, sisters, and welcome to Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace. My name is Angela, and this is episode 3. Okay, a couple of things to cover before we get started this episode. I finally have posted the promo for the podcast. You can find that at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com/promo, or there's a link on the main wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com homepage. The way that I intend this to work is that if you like the show and you want to play the promo on your own podcast, that's awesome. Send me a link and where I can find the promo for your podcast, and I will play it on the next episode of Warrior for Peace. The only thing I ask is that your promo be G-rated, since I am trying to keep this show family-friendly. Another thing is that the podcast actually got some feedback emails, which is super awesome! Or would that be wonder awesome? No, sorry. It might fit thematically, but wonder awesome just doesn't sound right. I'm gonna go with super awesome. Okay, the first one is from John Hames, who has some very lovely things to say. He says he has recently read the George Perez run that we're covering in the post-crisis continuity, and he's working his way through the New 52. He says the Golden Age stories are delightfully fun and silly, and he wonders why more superheroes don't find someone who looks exactly like them and pay them off so that they can then take their identity. So thank you so much, John. The other email that I have is from Patrick. He said he saw Batman v Superman and has been reading a whole bunch of different Wonder Woman comics. He asks about talking a bit more in my reviews about the artwork, and I'd like to do that, but the styles between the three comics, the 40s, the 80s, and the modern, is so different that it's almost impossible to compare them. But I want to focus a little more on the art, because a comic book, just the dialogue and the speech bubbles is really only half the story. He wonders if I've read the Earth 1 Wonder Woman series. I haven't yet. From what I've seen of other reviews, it doesn't look like the kind of thing that I would care for. What I am looking forward to is the Legend of Wonder Woman comic. That one looks really fun, and I will have to find a trade of that eventually. So thanks again to Patrick and John. If you want to send your thoughts, feedbacks, whatever, you can email the show at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace@gmail.com. Okay, let's start out with Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 2. The cover date is February 1942. Writer was Charles Moulton, who we know was actually William Moulton Marsden. Artist was Harry G. Peter. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Archives, Volume 1. Still recovering in the hospital, Captain Trevor remarks to Nurse Prince that he must get back to Intelligence Headquarters, as he is the only one who can identify some spies. But she insists he won't be recovered for another 3 weeks. 2 Army officers arrive to talk to Steve. Claiming the reason he doesn't recognize them is because they're from the West Coast, they say they need to take the captain in an ambulance to identify some people suspected of being spies. A reluctant Diana Prince accompanies them despite her suspicions, grabbing her medical bag before being loaded into the ambulance. But her suspicions are proven correct when the men actually turn out to be spies themselves and tie up the nurse and her patient. The ambulance drives for a long time until they reach an abandoned southern mansion guarded by armed German spies. Once inside, the prisoners are brought to a masked man wearing red gloves and a green version of one of those old-timey mad scientist's double-breasted lab coats. Steve recognizes the man as Dr. Poison, chief of the Nazi spies' poison division. The doctor plans to use truth serum to learn how much the Army Intelligence Service knows about Nazi agents, but Nurse Prince breaks her bonds and rushes over, saying the injection could kill the captain. Dr. Poison holds a scalpel to Steve's throat, saying he will definitely kill him if she doesn't obey his orders. Agreeing, Diana is given the syringe of truth serum to sterilize the needle, but she switches it with a harmless syringe of saline from her medical bag. She tells Steve to act as if he's been given the correct injection, and he gives the Nazis false information. Prisoners are tied up and put in separate cells, but Diana easily frees herself as soon as the guards leave. She changes into her Wonder Woman costume, which was in her medical bag, and breaks out of her cell. Seeing that the guards will shoot Steve if she tries to free him, she instead breaks into a garage and escapes in a borrowed car. Unaware of his prisoner's escape, Dr. Poison orders his men to dump his new toxin, Reverso, into the water supply of a nearby army camp. Reverso is designed to confuse the drinker's mind so that they do the exact opposite of whatever they're told. The plan succeeds, but the general quickly realizes that his men do the opposite of what they're told, and so is able to get the affected men into internment camps by reversing his orders. Backwards march, turn left to move right, etc. The gloating Dr. Poison shows Captain Trevor a newspaper report on the sick soldiers, but his smugness disappears when he learns Nurse Prince is no longer in her cell. Steve wonders if Wonder Woman could have freed her, but Dr. Poison, fearing she will lead the army to his door, orders his men to dig trenches and prepare for a siege so he will have time to get the remaining Reverso ready for shipment. If the army arrives, they are to be told that the hostage will be killed if they try to attack. Knowing that a direct attack will risk Steve's life, Wonder Woman drives to the Holiday College for Women looking for someone named Etta Candy. She finds her practicing with the marching band, but at first doesn't recognize her. Wonder Woman says that her friend, Nurse Diana Prince, told her that Etta was thin when she cared for her in the hospital. Etta, who is now upwards of 200 pounds, confirms that she was thin when she was at the hospital to get her appendix out, but that afterwards she was told to eat anything she wanted, and she has, as evidenced by her constant eating from an ever-present box of chocolates. Wonder Woman says that she needs to recruit 100 brave, pretty girls who are willing to help capture dangerous men to save the man Diana Prince loves. Apparently missing the dangerous part, Etta excitedly exclaims that every girl at the school will be happy to catch men, giving her distinctive cheer of, and I'm not entirely sure how to vocalize this, but let's go with, woo-woo! She helps Wonder Woman recruit the strongest, prettiest girls the college has to offer. The 100 women, plus Wonder Woman and Etta, form a marching band and make their way to the spies' hideout. Before they arrive, Wonder Woman warns them of the danger and arms them with handcuffs, saying that when she calls out, the girls are to cuff the men. The enthusiastic girls are ready to go, so they begin marching. The Nazis are initially confused at the sight of a band of women playing music through the woods, but when they offer to put on a dance, the men agree immediately. As the couples begin dancing in the mansion's ballroom, Wonder Woman takes a couple of girls to lure away the men guarding Steve's cell. Wonder Woman bursts through the door, and Steve calls her his beautiful angel as she removes his chains. Wonder Woman asks what an angel is, and says she'd rather be a woman, which is a bit odd, seeing as how she called herself a guardian angel just last issue. Carrying the still injured Steve to the ballroom, she gives the order, and the college girls make quick work of capturing their dancing partners. The two then rush to Dr. Poison's lab to get the antidote for the sick soldiers, when they find the doctor. Ripping off the villain's mask and coat, Wonder Woman confirms her suspicion that the doctor is in fact a woman in disguise. Calling herself Princess Maru, she pulls a gun on Wonder Woman, who of course blocks the bullets easily. Etta Candy then bursts into the room, tackling the princess to the ground. Wonder Woman threatens to strip her and march her barefoot to Washington if she doesn't give them the antidote, but saying she'd rather die than lose face, Maru finally gives in. Steve and Wonder Woman take the cure to the army camp while the college girls guard the spies until the military police arrive. Back at the hospital, Steve is again congratulated by his superiors, but insists the credit goes to Wonder Woman. Nurse Prince tells him she saw Wonder Woman, but thinks she's not very pretty, but the captain insists she's the most gorgeous being in the world. Okay, so we teased her a bit last episode, but chronologically this is the first appearance of Etta Candy, who becomes Wonder Woman's best friend in the Golden Age. I'd heard a lot about how she was this really positive, full-figured woman, and a really great character, but honestly, at this point she just seems like a joke. I mean, she's holding a box of candy and shoving candy into her face in basically every panel. I mean, I've heard her name might even be supposed to be pronounced Etta Candy, kind of like with a British accent, to make it even more of a pun, but that's just an annoying pronunciation, and I can't... there's only so much Golden Age silliness I can put up with. I'm gonna call her Etta Candy. If you want to headcanon that that's Etta, go right ahead. But yeah, almost every line she says has to do with eating candy or complaining that she's run out of candy. So I am a little bit disappointed by her portrayal in this issue. I've heard a lot of good things about her for a long time, so I was looking forward to this character. Hopefully she will get less of a joke. She'll be less of a joke in future issues. But getting back to the plot of the issue, the switching the truth serum for saline was pretty clever. I liked that bit. The plan to create this poison that makes everyone do the opposite of what you tell them, it seems fairly harmless. I mean, once you just figure that out, all you have to do is kind of a reverse psychology type of thing. Your army is just as efficient. Just say, shoot, I don't know, would you say shoot me to have them shoot the bad guy, or shoot yourself to have them shoot the... Or I guess no, you'd say don't shoot the bad guy. Yeah, that makes sense. See, it's not that difficult to figure out. The way that these college girls were so willing to just go after these Nazi spies was a little odd to me. It was like they didn't realize just how dangerous the situation was and thought it was just about meeting a bunch of handsome soldiers. But then again, the spies were perfectly willing to accept a whole bunch of college girls coming in and saying, hey, let's have a dance, so I guess that works out. The reveal that Dr. Poison was actually a woman was kinda cool. I'm wondering if maybe she's supposed to be Japanese. It's hard to tell from the illustration, but I know Maru is... Well, there's that cat on the internet named Maru, isn't it? She's from Japan. She? He? It's a cat. The cat's from Japan. The cat's named Maru. This woman is from is named Maru, so maybe she's supposed to be Japanese because World War II? I don't know. Overall, despite some of the silliness and the really jokey portrayal of Etta Candy, I liked this issue, so I'm going to give it 3 stars. Next up is Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 3. Cover date is April 1987. Plotter and artist was George Perez. Inker was Bruce D. Patterson. Letterer was John Costanza. Colorist was Tatiana Wood. Editor was Karen Berger. And scripter was Len Wein. And I'm reading this from the Wonder Woman by George Perez Omnibus. After dropping Colonel Trevor off at Hanscom Air Force Base, Wonder Woman and Hermes are flying over Boston. Diana is astonished that something so beautiful could be created by a people so violent, but Hermes tells her not to judge them too harshly. They live in constant fear of war, but it's this madness of Ares that Diana has been sent to fight against. The messenger of the gods also tells her not to be dismissive of Steve, because his fate is closely tied with hers. Speaking of Steve, he was found in the base hospital during the night. The doctors are astonished how he got there and that his injuries are already healing. General Hillary wants to see him, but General Tolliver has placed him under arrest for commandeering the jet, as there are no records of his orders from General Kohler. I know, a lot of generals, it's a little confusing. Kohler was the one who sent Steve on the mission. Hillary was the one who said the mission wasn't authorized and went to confront General Kohler. And now we have this new guy, Tolliver. Steve is also wanted for questioning about Kohler's death, so he will be held under guard until he wakes up and can give answers. Hermes leads Wonder Woman to Harvard University, where he says she will find the person who will be her mentor and guide her through man's world. Before he leaves, he hands her Harmonia's talisman, telling her she must learn its secrets. In the university library, we're introduced to the eccentric Professor Julia Capitellis. Reaching for a book at the top of a shelf, she falls off a library ladder but is caught by the Amazon princess. The professor tries talking to her rescuer and realizes she's speaking an odd dialect of ancient Greek. Wonder Woman shows her the talisman, and when she touches it, the professor has a vision of Themyscira and the Amazons, and she realizes that she has to help the strange visitor. Phobos watches this meeting through a magic portal. He decides to destroy the Amazon before she becomes more than an annoyance, hoping to please his father Ares. He climbs into the ribcage of a giant desiccated corpse and plunges his hand into its pulsing heart, what he calls the heart of the Gorgon. He pulls out a mass of what looks like chewed bubblegum, then blows on it to reshape it into a purple Greek statuette of a woman with large pointed ears. Elsewhere, his brother Deimos is in a secluded house giving a speech to a large crowd of people, ranting about how the time has come to strike against their enemy in order to protect their country. Back at the military hospital, Colonel Trevor has awoken, but he can't remember enough to answer General Tolliver's questions. All he can recall is random images of an island and being carried by a woman who could fly. Tolliver says no one will believe those delusions, but they can't take that chance, and they've come too far to let Trevor get in the way of their master plan. Steve realizes the nurse is about to inject him with a syringe full of air to induce a fatal embolism, so he fights back and manages to escape. A guard attempts to call security to stop the colonel, but he's shot in the back by Tolliver, who says he can't allow anyone to interfere. We get a quick scene of Phobos' statue being delivered to Professor Capitelis' house and being opened by her teenage daughter Vanessa, before cutting to Lieutenant Candy's apartment. Etta learns of Steve's escape and the death of the guard from Colonel Michaelis, but she refuses to believe that Steve is the one responsible. After she hangs up the phone, Steve climbs in through her window, telling Etta that she's correct. People are trying to kill him, and they have to find out why. Meanwhile, in a snowy Eastern European city, Demos is repeating the exact same speech from earlier to another large crowd, only this time he's giving it in Russian. Back at the Capitelis household, Julia uses her rusty Greek to introduce Diana to her daughter, telling Vanessa that the Amazon will be staying with them for a while. The girl acts annoyed, like the typical moody teenager she is, and her mother takes Diana to her study to teach the visitor English. By midnight, Diana already has a rudimentary understanding of the language, but Vanessa has fallen asleep in front of the TV. Behind her on the mantelpiece, the purple statuette opens its eyes. Hearing her daughter scream, Julia and Diana rush downstairs to see the living room in rotten shambles. Standing amid the destruction is a wiry purple woman, with red eyes and large pointed ears, wearing tattered rags. She introduces herself as Decay, saying she will be their death. Julia tries to get to her daughter, who is huddled in a corner and appears to have aged 50 years in mere moments, but Diana stops her. Seeing that her foe will not engage in combat, Decay uses her power of decomposition to make the house collapse around them. The one thing that struck me about this issue is that it's very 80s. As they fly over Boston and Hermes talks about how everybody is living in constant fear, you can see people on the street reading newspapers about the Cold War. Demos is obviously trying to incite violence in both the US and USSR. And it's mentioned that when Vanessa falls asleep in front of the TV, she was watching Johnny Carson. And I guess this makes sense. I mean, obviously this was being written in the 80s, so it makes sense with a story that is about the god of war going crazy, that the results would, of course, be the Cold War. The professor seems like an interesting character, though she apparently never read... Was it Lewis who said never use a big word when a small one will work? Because she's constantly saying stuff like, you saved my dermis. And I'm like, okay, we know you're a Harvard professor. You don't have to use big words to make us think that you're smart. But I do like that since Wonder Woman doesn't speak English, it makes sense to take her to someone who has studied ancient Greek to be able to teach her the language. That was pretty cool. Yet again, we have a high-ranking military official being a secret agent of Ares. I wonder how long it's going to take Steve to realize that there's something supernatural going on. So yeah, there wasn't too much in this issue. Introduced to a couple new characters, and Steve, is now on the run. But it was still pretty good, so let's give it 3 stars out of 5. Next up we have Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 3. Cover date is January 2012. The executive editor was Eddie Berganza. Cover art, pencils, and inks was Cliff Chiang. Writer was Brian Azzarello. Colorist was Matthew Wilson. Letters was Jared K. Fletcher. The editors were Matt Idelson and Chris Conroy. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Volume 1, Blood. It's evening on Paradise Island. The funeral pyres for the Amazons who died last issue are burning on the beach, and the whole Amazon tribe glares angrily at Diana. Alone in the empty city, Queen Hippolyta kneels on the ground in sorrow, saying she will spend a lifetime to take back what has happened this day. Flashback to earlier in the day. The Amazons are gathering wood for the pyres, mourning their loss. One Amazon, Aleka, blames Diana, whom she disparagingly refers to as Clay. Strife, still in her giant form, finds the nickname hilarious and goes off to tell Diana. The princess says no one has called her that since she was a child. Hermes shows up, not yet fully recovered from his injury and being supported by Zola, so Strife shrinks down to human size to argue with him. Diana tells Strife that she'd rather be anything but her sister, and the goddess remarks that you can't choose your family. She's cut off by the arrival of Hippolyta, who's finally going to tell her daughter the truth. As she talks, we get flashes of Hippolyta and Zeus secretly fighting each other in single combat over and over. On a stormy beach, atop snow-covered mountains, in a desert. Eventually these battles gave way to a night of passion that resulted in the Amazon queen becoming pregnant. She left the god of thunder in order to keep her pregnancy secret, and she and the other Amazons decided to invent the sculpted from clay explanation for Diana's birth to hide her from Hera. She just wanted to protect her daughter from being killed in her crib by her father's jealous wife, but Diana feels immensely betrayed, learning she's been lied to and made a fool her entire life. She storms out of the city and crashes her way through the forest, ending up at the beach where the funeral is taking place. While this has been going on, Aleka has been stirring up trouble as the Amazons were preparing for the funeral. She's questioned Diana's loyalty and even interrupts the funeral by yelling that paradise has been ruined, all because Diana brought a man, the god Hermes, to their island. It's then that the already distraught Diana stumbles onto the beach. Aleka cries out that here is the one who brought shame to Paradise Island, but Diana punches her in the jaw and picks up a torch. She uses her super breath to blow the flame onto the pyres, igniting them. We're now back to where the issue started, and Diana tells the assembled Amazons that the only shame on the island is hers, but she will remove it by leaving, and she won't be coming back. One of her sisters calls to her, but she turns away, saying never to call her Diana, or Clay, ever again. She is Wonder Woman. She then walks off into the night, followed only by Hermes, who's still being supported by Zola, and the smirking Strife. So yeah, this was the big change with the New 52 to Wonder Woman's origin. The fact that she's not sculpted from clay and brought to life by the gods, but she's actually a demigod. Apparently they thought the original origin was too ridiculous and confusing, but, I mean, it's comic books. Ridiculous and confusing is a feature, not a bug. I mean, nobody has a problem with Spider-Man being bitten by a spider if it's, radioactive or genetically engineered or whatever fake science explanation they come up with to justify him having spider powers. So I don't know why it's so ridiculous if you've got a world with the Greek gods to have them bring a sculpted baby to life. But this is the origin that we're getting in the movie. It was confirmed a while ago that Wonder Woman in the DC Cinematic Universe is going to be a demigod. And even on TV, there's going to be a show called Powerless about an insurance company in the DC Universe. It's like an office comedy type thing. And in the trailer they released, the one of the scenes was they were questioning whether or not damage caused by Wonder Woman was an act of God, since she's a demigod. So this new origin is kind of the new normal, I guess, for Wonder Woman. When I first heard that they'd gone with this, I was rather annoyed. How dare they change this origin that's been the same for 70 years? But honestly, reading the issue itself, it worked in context of the story, so I'm not too ticked with it at this point. I just have to keep in mind that this is a completely different Wonder Woman than the one we know from both the Golden Age and the post-crisis continuities. I didn't bring it up last issue because I didn't realize he was going to be a recurring character, but Aleka is the Amazon that Wonder Woman was sparring with just before Strife arrived, and she's the one that Wonder Woman wrestled with when all the other Amazons were tricked into attacking each other. I really felt Diana's betrayal in this issue. She should have been told the truth a long time ago. She's not a child or even a teenager anymore. The idea behind the New 52 was that it picks up about 5 years after most of the heroes start heroing, for lack of a better term. So she is at least in her mid-20s here. She should have been told this a long time ago. I understand Hippolyta wanting to protect her daughter, but good grief. She's an adult. You could have at least taken her aside at some point and said, hey, just so you know, we came up with this to keep you safe. I mean, just to keep her from having this, massive public embarrassment to find out that she's been lied to her whole life and everybody knew it. So yeah, despite the fact that I thought the changing her origin was really dumb when I first heard about it, this turned out to actually be a good issue, so let's give it 3 stars out of 5. Next is the Wonder Woman TV show, Season 1, Episode 2. The title is Fausta, the Nazi Wonder Woman. The original air date was April 28, 1976. Starring Linda Carter, Lyle Waggoner, and Fausta Graybles is played by Linda Day George. At the secret headquarters of the Nazi intelligence agency, spy and former Olympic athlete Fausta Graybles gives a presentation of secret footage of Wonder Woman to Colonel Kesselman. She tells of her plan to capture the Amazon and use her for their cause, a mission called Operation Fräulein. When asked how she will accomplish this, Fausta points out that Wonder Woman is always seen around Major Steve Trevor, so she plans to use him as bait. Back in Washington, Diana wishes Steve good night before she leaves the office. He plans to finish some paperwork, but Graybles enters disguised as the cleaning lady and knocks him unconscious. The next day, Diana receives a phone call from the spy in disguise, claiming she found a note on the street written by Trevor, which said he'd been kidnapped and to let his office know. Diana spins into her costume to investigate the warehouse near where the note was found. Graybles watches from the shadows as Wonder Woman demonstrates her strength and the power of the lasso against the German goons sent to test her. Rescuing Steve, Wonder Woman gets him to safety as the blonde spy hatches a new plot, to disguise herself as Wonder Woman in order to draw out and kidnap the Amazon. At a War Bonds rally, Graybles, wearing a wig and a masked version of the Wonder Woman costume, shows off with one of those carnival strength test games where you hit the thing with the mallet to try to ring a bell. She easily hits the bell, but then the real Wonder Woman shows up. She's wearing a similar mask, and her strike knocks the bell clean off. They then show off by lifting a barbell, but when the real Wonder Woman goes to lift it, a trapdoor opens up beneath her and she falls under the stage into the arms of a waiting spy. He manages to overpower her with a chloroform-soaked rag long enough to wrap her own lasso around her. Forced to tell the truth, she reveals that her strength will be gone if he removes her belt. He does so and drags the now unconscious Wonder Woman into a car, closely followed by Graybles. Steve and Etta, who've been watching the rally and thought the whole which is the real Wonder Woman's thing was a stunt, try to talk to her just before she drives away. But when she brushes them off, Steve quickly realizes this Wonder Woman is an imposter. Realizing the real one has been captured, Steve commandeers a taxi to chase down the spies, but he arrives just in time to learn their destination before they take off for Germany. Back at headquarters, the Major insists on rescuing the superhero, but General Blankenship refuses to authorize a mission into Germany itself. He says there's nothing they can do and orders Steve to get some rest. Instead, the Major has radio operators scan the airways, and they manage to overhear Graybles reporting to Colonel Kesselman of their imminent arrival with Wonder Woman. Steve decides to follow the General's orders and take a vacation in Nazi Germany. Graybles delivers Wonder Woman to the Colonel, but he refuses to let her be the one to question her, ostensibly because she wants to use the lasso of truth. Meanwhile, Steve visits the British Office of Strategic Services, where he meets an old friend who can put Steve in touch with an undercover agent, and just happens to be flying a mission over Berlin that night. After landing safely and hiding his parachute, Steve meets his contact, a man named Rojak, who says he's learned the location of Operation Fräulein. When the two are stopped by soldiers, they're allowed to go free despite their forged papers, because one of the soldiers knows that Rojak is a secret Gestapo agent. Back at Nazi intelligence headquarters, Graybles tries to demonstrate the lasso's power on Wonder Woman, but the Colonel doesn't believe her story of coming from a hidden island with no men, where women are trained to have both strong minds and bodies. Steve begins to suspect Rojak of leading him in circles as Graybles continues to insist that Wonder Woman's belt and lasso are the key to her power. The Colonel angrily snatches them out of her hands and throws them at Wonder Woman, who catches them and, strength regained, easily breaks her bonds. She overpowers her captors and ties up Graybles, telling her a woman so intelligent shouldn't be working for a man like Kesselman. She leaves the Nazi fort only moments before Steve arrives, having been delayed when Rojak revealed his true colors and was knocked out by a fellow American spy who said she'd long suspected him of being a double agent. The Major rushes into the questioning chamber, pointing his gun at Graybles and Kesselman and demanding they free Wonder Woman, but quickly finds himself captured when more armed Nazis break into the room, led by the bandaged Rojak. Having returned to America in the Nazi plane her kidnappers used, Yeoman Diana Prince goes in to work at the War Department to find that Major Trevor isn't there. Etta says he's still on furlough, but then General Blankenship comes in with news that Steve has been captured and is being held at Gestapo headquarters. Etta confesses that he went to rescue Wonder Woman, and Diana asks whether the American underground spy network can help. The general says they've recently learned that the network is riddled with double agents, but the report also said that Wonder Woman has escaped the Nazis, so he hopes she can help Steve. Diana once again spins into her costume and heads back to Germany in the invisible plane. Graybles and Kesselman, who leaked the news of Steve's capture to lure Wonder Woman back, watch as she enters their headquarters. Graybles plans to capture the Amazon in a cistern, but the Colonel scoffs at the idea and insists on doing things his way. Wonder Woman finds the cell where Steve is chained, but the doors close behind her and the wall starts moving in to crush them, trash compactor on the detention level style. Wonder Woman frees Steve's bonds and uses her strength to push the wall back, destroying its mechanism. As they try to escape, a trapdoor opens beneath them, dropping them into a pool surrounded by high, unescapable walls. Above them stands Graybles, who threatens to throw a switch and lower an electric cable into the water that will kill them with 50,000 volts. Kesselman and Rojak appear, and the Colonel demands that Wonder Woman tell him all her secrets, but she says she will only speak to the woman who captured her. He replies that he's the commander and she's his prisoner, but Graybles points out that they wouldn't have been caught had she not used the water trap. Enraged, Kesselman orders Rojak to throw her into the cistern, saying the report will show that she was responsible for Wonder Woman's escape and died in her rescue. But she throws off her attacker and dumps him into the water instead. She's then attacked by Kesselman, but not before she tosses a rope to Wonder Woman. The Amazon climbs out and pulls the Colonel off Graybles and into the water in one swift motion. Meanwhile, Steve has scaled the rope as well, and they leave the two Nazis trapped in the cistern. After their escape, Wonder Woman offers Graybles a chance to come to America, but she decides to stay in her homeland despite the fact that she's now a wanted woman. She wants to find like-minded people to help fight the Nazis, so Steve introduces her to the American spy who saved him from Rojak earlier. After the two women leave, Wonder Woman asks whether the Major will be in trouble for coming to Germany to rescue her, but Steve reveals he managed to steal a book from the Gestapo with the names of all the Nazi double agents, so the general won't be too angry. The next day in Washington, Diana brings Steve a report from their new agent Fausta Graybles. He expresses amazement at her bravery, staying in Germany despite the danger. Wonder Woman points out that maybe all women can do wonders if put to the test. Steve comments that Wonder Woman said the exact same thing, causing Diana to give a knowing smile. One thing I noticed in this episode is that Steve is constantly getting kidnapped. I've noticed that for a while, but I realized that it's the exact same style as the female love interest would be in most other TV shows from this era. But at the same time, even though he does get kidnapped a lot, he is still essential to the fight when they break out. Like last episode, he and Wonder Woman both fought off the Nazis together, so that's pretty cool. The supposed note that Graybles phoned in to the War Department, it was ridiculously over-detailed. Diana should have been suspicious, like she was last episode, with the anonymous tip that turned out to be a trap, but she wasn't this episode, which turned out to not be that big a deal because she's Wonder Woman. She can handle herself. The battle with the two Wonder Women was kind of cool. The setup that this was all part of a War Bonds rally was a smart move on Graybles' part. Colonel Kesselman, on the other hand, was basically a cartoon villain in this episode, but A, he's a Nazi, and B, this is a 1970s TV show, so I'll let it slide. And once again, we have Wonder Woman realizing that the woman she's fighting against deserves much better than the Nazi commanders that she has, and wants to make her an ally. Well, literally an ally instead of a member of the Axis. But, it would make a better ally than an enemy. But it's really cool that instead of, beating her up like you would in most superhero shows, she changes her mind and makes her realize the error of her ways. Linda Day George, who played Fausta, is most famous, I think, for her role on Mission Impossible, but she also played several characters on Fantasy Island and The Love Boat. So, another good episode. Let's give this one 3 out of 5 stars as well. Apparently that's the theme today. 3 stars for everybody. Okay, now some news. DC has released the 75th anniversary Wonder Woman logo. They did the same thing a few years back with Superman and Batman. This one is red text that says Wonder Woman and a blue Wonder Woman symbol underneath that with the 75 attached, and then a blue kind of detailed silhouette of Wonder Woman. They've also announced that in celebration of the 75th anniversary, there will, of course, be the movie next year, a Wonder Woman 75 panel at San Diego Comic-Con, a box set of Wonder Woman's greatest stories, a life-sized Wonder Woman invisible jet will be on display at Comic-Con, which I hope is actually a jet that's transparent and not just a big empty space saying, "Hey, see, invisible jet," because I've seen jokes like that before. They get old fast. A bunch of new Wonder Woman products, including a Barbie, accessories, and luggage, and backpacks, and beauty products, and a whole bunch of stuff. There's going to be toys from the DC Superheroes Girls, which is a cartoon web series that Wonder Woman is in. There's a special feature on her on the Batman v Superman DVD and Blu-ray. There's a Spotify playlist of women musicians. And Wonder Woman will be in the video game Injustice 2 that comes out in 2017. Also, at the 2016 Licensing Expo, we got to see all of the logos for the upcoming DC movies. You've got Flash, you've got Cyborg, you've got Aquaman, Green Lantern Corps, and of course that includes the Wonder Woman movie logo. There's new posters and detailed looks at the costumes that are being used in the movies for, I think that's Hippolyta and Steve Trevor. And I will, of course, include links to these in the show notes. One last thing before I go. Sisters, there's a man on Paradise Island. That's right, there's another Wonder Woman podcast out there, and it's run by a dude. I'm just kidding, of course. Matt seems like a perfectly lovely guy. Check out Radio Free Themyscira. It's available on iTunes and SoundCloud, and of course he has a Facebook page. He's alternating back and forth every other week between full episodes that have recaps of entire runs of the comics and minisodes that explain more some of the themes behind Wonder Woman. So definitely check that out. I will, of course, include links in the show notes to all of these, and you can read that at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com. Okay, and that's it for this episode. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, conundrums, or queries, you can email me at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace@gmail.com. Let me know if you're okay with your message being read on the podcast. You can look the show up on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, and Instagram under Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace, and on Twitter and Pinterest as Wonder Woman WFP. And of course, the main site for the podcast is wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com. The intro music was Wonder Woman Theme, the Best Themysciran Symphony Dialogue Dance Mix by Taz Damien Devil. You can watch the full video on his YouTube channel. The outro music is Wonder by the Double Clicks. You can find them on their website at thedoubleclicks.com. Next episode, I will be reviewing Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 3, Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 4, Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 4, and Wonder Woman Season 1, Episode 3. But until then, remember, sisters, hopes may fade, but wonders never cease.
'Cause you're not a quitter, you still believe the truth's in your lasso, your heart's on your sleeve, and when we're drowning in darkness, you'll save us all from